This is the FMCG podcast. We speak with the leaders of today and hear their advice on how you can develop your leadership potential. Today we are joined by Josie Morris of Woolcool, and we are talking about making everyday sustainable with the right wool packaging. Stay tuned and hear all about packaging, people, planet and profit. Let's get to it. Hi, good morning. My name's Rich and this is the FMCG podcast. We are Consumer Hub and we specialise in recruiting marketing, innovation and sales professionals across the FMCG sector. And today we're very excited because we've got Josie Morris, the Managing Director of Woolcool, on the show. And Josie, thank you very much for giving your time to this show. This show is all about helping develop the leaders of tomorrow in FMCG by talking to the leaders of today. So can you just give us a quick run through kind of your career, your story, and also Woolcool? Who are you as a business and what makes you exciting and different?
Sure thing. So I'm hoping you've got a few hours for me to go through all that. But I'm Josie. Thank you so much for having me on this. So anyway, long story short, I went to uni, left uni only a few years ago, I like to say, and going into a sportswear company. And then a few years later, the opportunity at Woolcool came up to start in a sales and marketing team. And then it's just kind of gone from there into me becoming MD. It's a family business, so it was my mum's business. So she kind of started to step away, and then myself and my sister started to take it forward.
Oh, very cool.
And the concept really was founded by my mum back in early 2000s, and it was basically used for National Trust farmers to send meat in the post instead of polystyrene. So in the very early days, she was a packaging consultant, and she developed it alongside the National Trust for their farmers to do exactly what we're doing now, but on a bigger scale.
Amazing. I love the National Trust. That's blast from the past now. That's what we did every summer. We just go around different kind of National Trust estates as family, and kind of like just such a good charity, isn't it? They're so good at kind of preserving heritage and landscape. So it's no surprise to me that obviously fantastic kind of sustainable ideas come out of a collaboration with the NT. But if it's a family business, then how have you found sort of coming into your family business kind of after you've already had a bit of a career somewhere else in sportswear? Was it sort of, did it feel very familiar, or did it sort of feel like you were getting a new insight on something you sort of thought you already knew?
It's really odd actually, because there's different stories about why people get into family businesses. And the business, my mum always had her own business since I was born, before I was born actually. I won't say how many years because she'll kill me because I'm so old. And actually how old I am. So back when she was younger, she's always had a consult, like a packaging design. Basically, her background is innovation, is design, is creativity, really. So I've kind of grown up in like her having her own business, and that being something that's very normal for me. But I really wanted, before I came into business, she floated the idea to myself and my sisters a few times. And kind of said, well, I don't really know. Like, I don't just want to come into it because it's family. I want to come into it, one, because you interview me, and we actually got her partner to interview me and to make sure I was right for the job. And two, because it's right for everyone and not just because it's family. So that was really important for me. And so that's why I went off and did other things before I came in, because I was like, I want to go see if there's a different world out there that actually, and then it kind of, the job that came up sat in my skill set. So sat within that really, the sales and marketing and chatty side, which you're seeing now.
Yeah, that's great. That's really interesting. That's really interesting that you kind of set up your own interview for that as well. I've not heard of that before. That's cracking. And so one of the things I wanted to kind of ask you about is I've noticed that you guys not only do you have a fantastically sustainable product, which I want to get into in a minute, but you're also BCorp. So tell me about that decision. What prompted that, and what benefits do you think being a BCorp business offers you and also the customer base?
It's a really good question, really. And I think that the first thing I always say is that no company is perfect, no matter how much you want to be. Every company has things they can do better, and particularly on environmental and social goals. There's always things you can do much better. So I think I always frame these conversations with, we're not perfect, and it's an opinion, and we don't. This is my experience of what I've done so far, and there's right ways for some business and right ways for other businesses. But for me personally, and for the company, B Corp was really, it matched our values. So we got B Corp in February 2020, and before that I was aware of it, but their ethos around, you know, looking after the people, planet, and also being profitable, that was, you know, one of the things that they say is profit's not a dirty word. It kind of sat quite well with us. So a lot of what we were doing already, we were kind of B Corp without being a B Corp officially. So we thought it's a good way externally to kind of separate ourselves and say, yeah, actually we are doing those things, and here's an external body that's saying it. It's not just us. So yeah, and one of the big benefits is the networking experience and the kind of knowledge sharing you get from the people then around you within that network. And they're really supportive as a group as well. So, you know, it's not, as I say, it's not for everyone, but it's certainly a really great basis for a good business that is also managing its impact on the wider world.
So it kind of sets your values and mission in the context of the like-minded businesses that have an alignment with that sort of mission statement of people, planet, profit. Yeah,
I think it, you know, for me it makes a lot of sense. There'll be other people that will argue against it, I'm sure, but for me it makes a lot of sense that if you look after your people, if you look after the people, you look after the planet, you'll have a sustainable business. And I don't mean sustainable in a green sense. I'm talking like a business with a legacy. And so, yeah, I think that's where it sits well with us. And why I was quite keen to actually get the certification officially.
Great. That's really interesting. And am I right in saying that you guys are the only UK packaging company that is a certified B Corp?
Yeah, there's a couple more now, I think, but we were the first kind of our time, and we think we're the only of our kind that do what we do.
Right.
But yeah, we were, which I was quite proud of that.
Oh, very cool. I think one of my friends, Rich Howell, runs the recruitment company Marvel FMCG. He's actually a competitor of mine, but we're very good natured about it. And they've just become, as far as I know, the UK's first certified B Corp recruiter. And one of the things that they do is they give a proportion of all their fees back into the Alzheimer's Society, which is great. And he's got kind of a personal connection to that. And you kind of listen to him talk about it. And yeah, he's really, really inspirational. Seems like a great concept. But just wanted to take it a bit further and ask you about the actual technology itself. What makes wool so special as a packaging technology? What is it about wool that sort of sets it apart from other technologies that you could use, for transport or for e-commerce or pharma, etc.?
So this is going to be a really cop-out answer, I think, but I'll go into it. What I'm going to say is wool's been around since like 9,000 BC, right? So in terms of evolution and development, it's had however many thousand years of R&D. So, and to do the thing we're using it for. So it insulates a sheep, regulates the temperature of a sheep. Obviously the sheep gets sheared at certain points, but it still has a bit of wool on it, which provides it with the insulation against the cold or kind of regulation against the heat. So first and foremost, we've almost like borrowed that from nature, that it's a material that's been created for regulation purposes. So if you take that technology and you go, this is what this material has been born to do for 9,000, 10,000, however many thousand years. And we're going to borrow that technology within our box. And the way that we've created our product is kind of enhancing that. And then within our box, it will insulate whatever's within that box. So, the easy answer is nature's developed it for us. The more complex answer is obviously we've then invested, best part of millions of pounds now in R&D to develop the product so that we almost optimize that like natural element of it. Wool as a material has so many properties, and I won't preach about wool too much, but it has so many great properties. And alongside that, it's natural, it's abundant, it's renewable, it's compostable, biodegradable. So as a material, it's a bit of a miracle material, actually. It's one that you can't replicate with any man-made fibre on its own. You have to have a combination of fibres to do what wool does.
Wow, okay, that's really interesting. So how does it compare in terms of the environmental footprint for polystyrene. I know it seems like an obvious comparison, but I mean, I've got some in my loft. I've got some wool insulation, and I noticed that when you go to a builder's merchant, for example, I know this is a slightly different sector, but the polystyrene is always a really cheap kind of insulating material. And on kind of cheaper, lower grade kind of e-commerce packs, you might get polystyrene in there. Wool, I mean, it's got these incredible sort of benefits in that it's, like I say, it's got a depth of history in natural history, and it's also recyclable, a bit of a wonder material. But just in terms of that carbon footprint, which a lot of people are concerned about, how does it compare with kind of other alternatives like polystyrene that are also quite mainstream?
Yeah, so I think we're actually going through our carbon footprint analysis at the moment, and one of the things we've come up against is our product doesn't really have a beginning of life assessment at the moment. It does, because you've obviously got sheep, but what we're doing is, so our scope 1 and 2 actually is really so far what we've seen so far is really low compared to your kind of manufacturing of your polybox and stuff. The scope 3, which is obviously a bit more out of our control, we're actually working with a couple of universities on doing specific to our product, because the key thing for me with any measure of your impacts as a company is not just to take data from somewhere else, is to do your own, because I think carbon footprint can be a bit of a grey area for some people, and the thing that I've been really passionate about is making sure that we're producing the right figures against the right measures, and then not doing something that either makes us look really, really, really good or really, really bad. Obviously, it can work either way, but trying to find what the right answer is rather than the quick answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it means that we can measure that really, because I think if you get the wrong measurement, you don't know what you're measuring. But scope 1 and 2 is quite easy to measure. Your scope 3 is obviously completely outside of kind of outside of your control in a way. So that's something we want to get right, and then at that point we can then start looking at kind of how do we offset this, how do we change this, how do we improve this. And answer your question around carbon versus polystyrene, that will follow through once we've done our assessment, but certainly early days and past experience of doing like small projects on this, it's a lot better, from a kind of an end of life, middle and end of life point of view. Just a very simple analogy. Our size 4 box is kind of like this kind of size. It's kind of probably like a bit bigger than an A4 sheet of paper, but in a box. And you'd get probably about the equivalent on 2 pallets. You get the equivalent of 240 boxes worth of that, because it's flat packed. The equivalent polystyrene box, you'd get maybe 12 to 24 on a pallet.
Oh, really? Wow.
So in terms of shipments in, you're saving fuel, you're saving energy from your trucks, you're saving forklift truck, whatever that is. There's lots of savings and weight as well. So weight of the product.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered the fact you could flat pack it all, and I guess it is lightweight, isn't it? So that's incredible. So you mentioned there's you said did you say stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3? Did I mishear that one?
It's scopes.
Oh, scope
1, 2, yeah.
And what does that stand for? So that's new to me. Sorry if I sound ignorant there.
So you have, let me get this right because this is all quite new to me too. So you have scope 1 and 2. So scope 1 is kind of what you can control within your own processes. So like our warehouse, for example, it's what type of energy we use. So do we use renewable energy? Do we use gas? Do we switch our lights off? What kind of cars do we use? What kind of travel are we doing? So it's looking at the things you do as a business. Scope 2 is your suppliers. So it's a little bit further out. Someone's going to correct me on this probably, but that's the kind of way I see it. And then scope 3 is almost like beyond that. So it might be 2 or 3 removed from you. It might be, something completely, so something further than that. So the control we have the most is over scope 1. So scope 1 and 2, then 2, obviously we can have a bit of control looking at, talking to our suppliers, maybe changing suppliers or encouraging our suppliers to do different things. And then scope 3 is more about kind of raw material and how it's produced. So, kind of scope 3 for oil would be probably getting the oil from the ground, would be scope 3, my understanding. Feel free, anyone, to shoot me down, but that's my understanding of it so far. It's so complex that I'm still learning so much, and I've been doing this for 3 or 4 months now. So, yeah.
Oh, no, thanks for the whistle stop overview. That is very interesting. It's something I'm really interested in, so that's kind of new to me. I'm definitely going to be looking at that. So one of the things that so just a quick bit of context for the guys watching this and listening to us. I came across Woolcool because I ordered a Morrisons Bonfire take-home box for the family last year in lockdown, and me and Mrs. were into recycling, composting, gardening, all that kind of good stuff, and we were just blown away by the fact that we got this box, and absolutely all of the box, from the just a very, very minimal plastic sheet that covered the wool through to the wool and the cardboard, could be recycled. And we composted the wool, and there was a really good product information sheet telling the consumer how to recycle it all, which was fantastic. And we were just blown away by it. So that's kind of why we're so excited to get Josie on the show. So yeah, but just on that point, I looked at your website, and there was this really kind of informative page talking about the circular economy. I wonder if you could just elaborate on that concept, because I'd not come across that until I looked at your website. I just think for those listening who are interested in how our industry that we all love can be more green, that concept could be really interesting for people to explore further.
Yeah, sure. So I think first and foremost, packaging is, and I'm going to say this, but it is kind of true if you think about it. Packaging is really key because I think it gets a bit of a bad rep, but it's really key for protection and information, really. So if you think about it, whether it's, I don't know, what ingredients are in a product, whether it's protecting your strawberries from going off, or whether it's telling you how many tablets to take, when you've got a headache, it's really important that, and in sterile environments, for example, so it's really important that packaging's there. I think kind of in terms of the circular economy side, one thing we're aware of as a packaging company is, I think we have an ethos that basically says our impact, our responsibility. Right. So when looking at all the wool going out, I was kind of going, well, what happens at the end of it? Where does it go? Where does it end up? And so we've kind of done like a three-stage approach almost, which is reuse in your home if you only get one or two, because sending it back to us if you only get one or two isn't really, from a carbon footprint point of view, makes much sense. So that's your first kind of circular economy, in that you can either reuse it in your home in a cushion or pet bedding or whatever, or like you've done in your compost, or you can reuse it in plants. So that's one option. Option two would be to send back to us. So that's the circular economy, really. It come back, so you can print off a label, send it back with, I think it's Collect Plus we're using at the moment, drop it off at a kind of a local shop, send it back to us. We would then reprocess it. So we wash and scour it again, and it either goes into new Woolcools if it's suitable to do so, or it'll go into bedding or the like, like stuffing for bedding, mattresses. So they're the two options really that we can put it into. So there you've got the reuse of the material. And then the third one is kind of encouraging, if you can't send it back to us, or reuse wise, you don't want to reuse it, is encouraging it to go into the right chains. So whether it is going into compost chain, whether it's going, the plastic's going in the right chain and the cardboard's going in the right chain. So just around that education. As I said, the key for us around circular economy is giving the options so that, that reuse, recycle, the reduce, reuse, recycle are kind of all addressed within our story almost.
Yeah, right. That's really interesting. So you kind of taking that end output of the packaging waste from the purchase, and then creating an input context for it again, where it can kind of get integrated back into another use, but making it easy for the customer and the shopper to sort of get involved in that. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and engagement. I mean, it's a really great engagement tool, and we get, on our Instagram, we get so many pictures sent to us of how people reused it, and from like little felt toys to compost to, we had one person whose child had a project, and they created like an intestine out of it. I was
cool.
Blown mind. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's something my kids really fascinated, because we went and put it in the compost, and like my daughter, she's really into gardens. She kept just playing with it and looking at it and holding it up to the light and looking at how the light was sort of playing with the fibres. This is quite a beautiful material when you get it up close, whereas you compare it to, plastic or polystyrene, they're ugly. Your kids aren't going to get sort of play with the textures or get brought into the experience there. But yeah, it was really interesting the way they were kind of like looking at it and playing with it and talking about it. It was like they would a stick or a piece of wood that just catches their interest, or a little rock. They're funny kids. They just sort of, things catch their attention, they just spin off on it. And I just was really sort of intrigued by the fact that, yeah, the product itself was just a very attractive kind of playful product. Anyway, that's just me on the tangent. But yeah,
it says a lot about me that's the way I react to it too.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
Like natural materials just fascinate me. I think natural materials are really undervalued as a resource, because there's so many things they can do just as well. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for plastic. I'm not a plastic hater. I think
same.
It's an amazing material, but there's so many materials out there you could use as an alternative alongside plastic, and plastic can be really great for certain uses. But yeah, I think it's a bit undervalued in a way, but I think it's coming back. There's a resurgence, isn't there, of the natural materials, which is obviously what we're seeing as well with what we're doing.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And well, I guess that leads nicely actually into another question that I'd chalked up to ask you, which is, what are you seeing as some of the key trends in packaging at the moment?
I think sustainability is a big one. I think reduction, trying to reduce the packaging. And I think going back to what I was saying before around packaging and the importance of it, I think there's a balance. I mean, look at food waste. There's a reason that there's a lot of packaging around food is to reduce food waste. So you eliminate the packaging of food, you end up with quite a lot of food waste if that's not managed in the right way. So I think some of the trend will be around reduction on how much can you strip out before it becomes damaging food waste. Sustainability is a big one. I think we try to be careful not to greenwash. That's one thing we try and do. And it's the same about the investigation into carbon footprint, is making sure that we're investigating the right thing and not just the good marketing story.
Great.
Because that, ultimately, there's no point in doing it if you're not doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And then I think probably trends around shipment of food online is a big one. And then in which case needs packaging. So and I think going forward, I think there'll be kind of a debate between plastic and paper in the future. Which one do we use? Because paper is great, but it comes from trees, and plastic has its uses and reasons for it. So I think there's a lot of new materials coming through as well. So it's exciting times really for the packaging industry.
Yeah, that's a really interesting term used there, greenwash. It is a bit of a pet hate of mine, is kind of companies that talk the talk, but primarily it's for their marketing story, not really because it's a value thread that goes through the whole business. I mean, one of the things that because I eat a lot of vegan stuff. One of my favourite vegan products is Mighty P shake, but I'm not a vegan. But I've come across some products, I'm not going to mention names, that are vegan, and it's very much, when you scratch underneath the surface, it's a marketing ploy. They're jumping on it because it's a bandwagon, and it's another thing to activate. Whereas the guys that I know that are really serious about their veganism, they've got quite nuanced views about how it all sort of fits together, and they appreciate that if you are making something that's meat free but it's from a monocropped plant source, then that has just as many environmental problems as meat that's kind of monocropped as well. So it is an interesting kind of juncture, and I think a lot of consumers are probably becoming wiser to the fact that there is an ability that companies have to sort of tell their story honestly, or like say just greenwash it. So it's kind of great to hear your ethos on that, because I think as a consumer who's quite engaged in this anyway, and my wife certainly doesn't know as much about the industry as I do because she's not working in it, but we're both wise to it. So I think the more you can be really honest about kind of your sort of sustainability journey and not greenwash it, like I say, the more you're going to get people bought in and kind of hopefully contributing to the journey and contributing to your mission too, I would imagine.
Sure, yeah, and I think it's about balance. I mean, I from a life point of view, I'm the same with the business really, is there's a balance. I'm kind of not either or. I'm kind of, well, let's do a combination of. So whether it's and all of it's personal preference as well, isn't it? It's a bit like a diet. The way I kind of see it's a bit like a diet with sustainability. There's no quick fix. There's no something that you can do tomorrow that means that suddenly the planet is all saved and everything's perfect again. It's not the reality. It's a bit like going on a diet. You can do the Atkins diet, but the chances are you put the weight back on in a few years' time. So that's the way I see sustainability, which is you can do one thing and fix that, but the knock-on effect might actually be not the best thing in the future. So I kind of sit somewhere in the middle, which is not good or bad, I guess. I kind of, I'm not polarized either way, which is, if you exercise and eat properly, you tend to lose weight. Like that tends to be the theme, but it takes longer. And that's how I see sustainability a little bit is if you do little bits of the right things and, you switch your tap off when you do your teeth or whatever it is, if everyone does a little thing, it has a bigger impact and it's less imposing on people. And it's the same, as you say about kind of, certain products and greenwashing is we try and sit somewhere in the middle that says we think our products are sustainable products. We know we can be better. Tell us where we can be better if you want to offer up that information to us. We're open to that conversation and we're trying our best to analyse certain areas of our business to make them better as well. And no business is at the end goal. So I think it's also being okay to say we're not perfect and actually we are trying. This is what we're doing to try. We're trying to look after our people as well as the environment. So there's a whole other thing going on than just the environment, also people. So I've gone off a bit of a tangent, but really my take on sustainability is somewhere in the middle. I'm not vastly either way. I know things need to change, but it's sometimes incremental changes are better than trying to do one big thing in one go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's kind of a pragmatic approach that tries to take the whole with you rather than just highlighting sort of one lever in that whole big picture at the expense of others, isn't it? Like you say, if you push things through so quickly that they're not properly stress tested, analysed, assessed, and then that is to the detriment of something else within the environment or within the people sphere, it's not good for your other business, is it, long term, or anybody else? And I really like that philosophy. It's very nuanced. Just the Woolcool story, it's very engaging, and the website's fantastically kind of educational. What is it that you think people really connect with and resonate with? Because it sounds like you've got a very engaged Instagram following, which is very unusual for a packaging company. Like, what is it about the Woolcool story that people are getting behind and getting interested in?
I mean, I can guess, but you might be best asking someone who's outside of it. But I think I hope people see us as just, not taking ourselves too seriously and kind of trying to do the right thing, and whatever the right thing is, but, we're trying to build a business that's got a bit of a good legacy to it, trying to do it in the right way, trying to engage people in different ways of working, whether it's how we engage with our team or with our customers and suppliers. And hopefully that comes across. I think we're just trying to just be who we are. Does that make sense? Yeah. It sounds a bit cheesy, and now I'm saying it, I think it may not be coming across the way that I mean it, but yeah, I think generally I think we're trying to be what we are, and just this is who we are, and this is what we do, and kind of why we do it. I think people quite like it if there's some real stuff out there, and I think we're the first to poke fun at ourselves, and we're kind of the first to go, we know that's not quite right, we're working on it. I think also we from an engagement point of view, I think there's the thing, isn't it, around sheep and animals, and the fact that people perhaps buy into the natural side, and they like the fact that we're doing something with something that's so historic and natural. Yeah. And maybe that has we do post some pictures of like puppies and sheep, which I think helps also.
Always a winner. Yeah, my kids are obsessed with Herdwick sheep from the Lake District. My youngest lad's got about 3 herdy teddies, and everything's herdy, and they just love sheep. They just think they're cool. So why not? More sheep the better. Exactly. So just taking it up a level to corporate partners then. I mean, the last year has, I would imagine, offered lots of opportunities for you to support, because I know you guys specialise in sort of pharma solutions, packaging, and also e-commerce as well, kind of 2 USPs that you've invested in. What are kind of corporate partners looking for from a packaging supplier like yourselves in this day and age? And then within that, what's your kind of ideal, client profile?
So I think it's a very good question. I think the corporate side, I think going back a little bit, before the Blue Planet episode, everyone knows it, don't they? Before that, we sold on performance, then cost, and then environment. And actually, the biggest driver for most of our customers was cost. Fast forward after and then sustainability was just on the side. By the way, it's sustainable, but we also it's cost effective, and it's something that performs the same, if not better, than polystyrene. So you were selling on that. Going forward, kind of after David Attenborough's, so David Attenborough's lovely, very informative Blue Planet episode, we were starting to see a shift. So it became sustainability started creeping up. So to the point where sustainability and cost started becoming equal, and performance used to be, well, does it work? So the first question would be, is it sustainable? How is it sustainable, actually, would be the first question. Whereas before, no one really cared, or people did, some did. We had some great partners when we first started out that were bought into sustainability over anything else. But corporate-wise, it is cost-driven, it is performance-driven. Sustainability was kind of down on the agenda. What we're seeing now is sustainability becoming a higher part of the agenda, because whether it's because they generally care, which I think a lot of them really do. I think they're trying to make a difference, and they can see that they can make a big difference. Or whether it's because they're seeing a marketing opportunity. For me, it doesn't really matter either way, because at least they're making a change. In answer to your question, I think the sustainability side is what the corporate companies are starting to look at more, with also the gambit that it has to work and has to fit within a cost. So I think there's it's a battle when you sit in a meeting. I was sitting in a meeting a while ago with a pharmaceutical company, and there was 12 people in the meeting, and there was a finance person, a quality person, an environmental person, a product person, an operations person. You're trying to hit so many different angles. But yeah, I think sustainability is becoming higher up the agenda, and I would say corporate wise, it's something that is becoming more and more aware of.
That's so interesting.
And what was it? So who would be our perfect? I mean, we'll work with anyone, to be honest with you. I think the most perfect type of client would be one that's open, and isn't just looking at, we are cost effective, and a lot of our solutions have improved people's cost base. But when you're looking at just cost, it's very hard to work with someone who's just driven by unit cost. So it's someone with that balanced, holistic approach that goes, sustainability is important, performance is important, cost is important, but we're happy with the whole product rather than just the true cost of it, rather than just the unit cost and driving that down. So I think the perfect person would be someone who had a similar kind of mentality on balance, rather than, extreme cost saving.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, so kind of, I guess it takes it back to values, doesn't it? Making sure there's an alignment there in that holistic, values-driven approach. And just finally, Josie, I'm pulling my line again here. It's gone off. Here we go. I've got it. Right. What do you see as the future for Woolcool going forward? Are there any kind of exciting projects that you can give us a quick snapshot or window into?
There's one at the moment that's quite exciting, but I'm not going to. I'm going to do that thing where I go, I can't tell you about it at the moment. But I think we're looking at different markets. So one of the exciting things is looking at where the wool can be used in different markets. That's quite an exciting project. There's a couple of other kind of wool-based insulation type of products that we're looking at, and then just developing the company. I think one of the things our focus is on is making sure we're still providing quality to customers, but also developing. So, focusing on our R&D and really developing products for the future. And then also creating a business with a legacy that people are proud to be part of. So one of the big things for our team is that I want them to feel like they are, because they are why we're where we are. It has nothing to do with myself. It's to do with the team and how hard they work and the passion they have. But I want them to be proud of what we're doing, and not something they're going, I don't like what we're doing. I want them to actually genuinely feel part of it and be proud of it. So I think that's really key, that we continue that as we grow, because that's a really difficult thing to keep an ethos as you grow with a lot of people. So that was where I kind of want to see it going, and have the growth. not at all costs, not growth at all costs, but a sustainable growth that means that we can provide jobs for the area as well.
Yeah, right. That's really interesting.
It's a lot of different answers to that, isn't it?
No, it's great. No, it's really good. It's honest. That's what makes these podcasts fun. It's just people sharing their story honestly. Just on that point, then, like, what are you most excited for? Not just for your own company, but the industry itself. Like, what are you most excited about when it comes to the packaging industry?
I think, I mean, it's kind of, I guess it's married a little bit to what we're doing at Woolcool, but it's the developments coming through. I think it's really exciting to see the different developments, whether it's a product development or it's a development in recycling. So I think there's a few things that are happening at the moment, kind of bubbling under, that are to do with recycling of materials, which is great, because I think it's great having new developments coming through and new materials, but if there's nothing at the end of life, it's kind of, it's a bit, not pointless, but it's difficult. But I think the recycling ethos, the changes in legislation, things like that improve recycling, that's quite exciting for me, because I think if that changes, the beginning of life is important to look at, the middle of life, but the end of life, if something ends up in landfill, it's kind of a wasted material. But if it can go through a joined up recycling scheme, that is a lot better, because then it gets reused. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, new development and new opportunities for recycling, reuse of material, they're the two things I'm hoping to see more of. And I think there will be, in the next 5 years, quite a lot of change within that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, I mean, we we live in Wakefield, actually. Props to Wakefield, because our recycling system's better than Leeds. All you people in Leeds watching. But actually, it's been great watching the council really kind of put their money where their mouth is, and they built this huge new kind of waste processing site. It's basically a new tip. It doesn't sound very sexy, but actually the number of things you can recycle now versus 10 years ago when I moved here is phenomenal. And you see actually that percolate down into the way people sort of do in the day to day on a street level. People recycle loads more around here than they used to do, and actually policy changes, technology changes, across the board do really impact stuff on the ground. So I think it is a pretty exciting time, and if you can be a part of that, that's great. But just finally, because the whole point of this podcast is about kind of equipping the leaders that are coming through the industry. Are there any resources, podcast, books that you've come across, read, digested that have really made an impact on your leadership style or kind of your leadership expertise that you recommend to people watching or listening to this?
Probably this is probably cliche, but there's a guy called Simon Sinek that talks about why. You start with why, yeah. And actually, we always do start with why. Now, whether that's because I always used to ask why as a kid, or whether that's because I saw that video, there's a video, a TED talk about it. I think it's Why Leaders, something like Action with Leaders, I can't remember it now. But yeah, so basically that's a really good, if you just, I guess, Google Simon Sinek and start with why, there's a really good video of him giving a TED talk. And I think for me, if you start with why with everything you do, you're more likely to get a better outcome, because you understand what the motivation is because ultimately everything's driven by humans, isn't it? So if you understand why someone's doing something, you can almost then change or adapt what you're doing to complement that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So within our team, if we explain to our team why we're doing something, they're more likely to get on board than if you just shout at them and tell them what to do. Because actually they're like, well, why are we doing that? Because that's the first question, is if you tell someone what to do, they ask why.
Yeah.
Because if you tell them why, then they're not going to ask why, they know. So yeah, that one probably. And I think I don't know who said this to me, but it's always stuck with me, is just don't try and be someone you're not don't try and be a manager, just be who you are. And I think that's a big one, because I think if you try and be a manager, you end up, if you change your personality to be a manager, I don't think it comes across right. I think you just be who you are, even if you're a bit of a fool like myself, and people roll their eyes at my jokes.
Do you crack some good dad jokes?
I like to think they're very funny, but in the office, I think people laugh out of pity. I think that's what happens, is they laugh, or they laugh because they feel like they have to.
That's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, but other than that, I think they're the two things that have always stuck with me.
Cool. Right, no, that's great advice. And yeah, where can people find you? Where can people follow the Woolcool story?
So if you go on our website, www.woolcool.com, there's a lot of information on there. Some around recycling now. We've got a whole new recycling page, which is really great. So people looking to know what to do with our product. We are Woolcool across social media. I want to get a TikTok at some point, which I think will be awesome, but not sure what to do on that. And then obviously LinkedIn, it's just Woolcool. So there's plenty of ways. And as I said, if anyone's got any suggestions, please do reach out. Suggestions or feedback or anything. We're always open to ideas and all sorts. It's got to be engagement, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, guys, if you've enjoyed the show today, please do go and follow Woolcool across social. Check out the website. Honestly, I've looked at lots of corporate websites in my time. There is so much stuff on there. It's really interesting, especially if you're a bit of a sustainability geek like I am. You will love it. Not kidding you on there. And Josie, thanks again for your time. It's been super. Really enjoyed hearing your story. Thank you for investing in this podcast with us, and hopefully the careers of the people that are listening. And we'll see you soon, guys. Next time. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. Check out the playlist here for more content like this. Click the donuts to subscribe so you never miss an update, and give us a like and a comment so we know what content you'd like to see from us. See you next time.